Hello and welcome to this podcast. My name is Peter Mazurek and I'm the author of a book called Modern Catholic Concerns. I'm presenting a series of podcasts in which I'm reviewing some of the key issues in my book. This podcast is the third in the series, and in this podcast I want to review the teleological argument, which is an argument in support of belief in the existence of God. This argument is more commonly known as the watchmaker argument. The teleological argument is a relatively modern argument. It is based upon the works of much earlier philosophers and theologians. A relevant starting point is to consider this issue is the dogma of the Catholic Church. This dogma is as follows. God, our Creator and Lord, can be known with certainty by the natural light of reason from created things. This argument is very much a generalization and does not specify the sort of things that can be considered using the natural light of reason, nor does it appear to be a compelling proof because it says can be known, which means that the argument is subjective. This means that individuals who consider these things can be personally satisfied to the degree of certainty that God does exist. Some philosophers and theologians argued that this dogma may not be valid. So, in 1910, Pope Pius X extended the dogma to include as follows, quote, "The existence of God can be formally proved through reason by means of the principle of causality," end quote. In the previous podcast, I dealt with the 5 ways of Aquinas. The second way of Aquinas is the argument that everything that has come into existence has a cause of coming into existence, and that you cannot have an infinite regression of causes. Clearly, the rider added by Pope Pius X is based upon this argument of Aquinas, although it does not include Aquinas' assertion that you cannot have infinite regression. The 5th way of Aquinas can be regarded as an argument from design, in that things that exist and serve some purpose have been designed by a being to serve that purpose and have been created accordingly. His argument goes on to say that the designer of all natural things that serve a purpose is God. This 5th way can therefore be seen as an early formulation of the primary part of the Catholic dogma. The teleological argument was formulated and presented by William Paley in 1802. He compared inferences that can be drawn from finding a rock with those that can be drawn from finding a watch. In relation to the stone, he said, it is simply there and suggests no particular inference about its nature and origin. Whereas in relation to the watch, he said, quote, its several parts are formed and put together for a purpose, that they are so formed and adjusted as to produce motion, and the motion so regulated as to point out the hour of the day, end quote. This yields the inference that the watch must have a maker. So if we want to consider natural things in the light of reason, then what we can look for with our reason is design, purpose, and order. Let us then consider what we can deduce from the existence of a watch. The first thing we know is that it is not a natural object, in that watches do not grow on trees or in the ground or are in any way natural objects. We know that a watch is designed to work and that its components are usually metal. The metal has been mined from the earth, refined, acquired by a manufacturer who fashioned all of the component parts of the watch from the metal ingots provided, and then assembled these parts in accordance with a design for a working watch. After that, the watch was sold either directly or through some intermediary, and then through some chain of events came to be seen by us. Clearly, this process exhibits design, purpose or function, and order. This analogy could have been explored in relation to any machine manufactured by humans that works, including anything from a jumbo jet to a child's swing. And the conclusion and logical validity of the thought process would be the same. The point of this argument is that if you consider any of the natural, non-man-made things of this world, you will find design, function, and order, just as you did in considering the watch, leading to the inference that the natural object also has a creator. In my book, I considered the teleological argument at section 2.1.5, and in that section, the natural thing that I looked at as an example was the life cycle of the Pacific salmon. For the sake of a little variety, I'd like now to consider the life cycle of trees, looking for design, purpose, and order. A tree is a carbon-based living organism. It has roots, a trunk, branches, and leaves. Its growth mechanism is internal and a little complicated. Its roots take nutrients from the soil, and its growth is through photosynthesis. It has a variety of functions, including shade to some ground animals, as a food source to some ground animals, as a food source to some birds, as a refuge for birds and some animals from ground-based predators, and also a nesting place for birds. It has its place in the ecology of our planet is that it absorbs carbon dioxide and exudes oxygen, which function helps maintain the balance of oxygen in our atmosphere, enabling human life to continue. When a tree dies, its remains can be used as a fuel by burning. It can also be used by humans for the construction of furniture and many other wooden objects, including building materials for housing. Indeed, some trees are harvested, sometimes in a sustainable way, for use that we humans can make of timber. From this brief outline of the nature and function of trees and the complexity of the life cycle of trees, it's clearly apparent that it has a design, and from its functions it's apparent that it has a purpose. Indeed, it has multiple purposes in the ecology of this planet. There's also significant order when we look at the huge variety of different kinds of trees, which all have a similar life cycle and all have similar functions. In my book, I considered some of the arguments against the existence of God. In section 2.3.2, I considered the arguments of those philosophers and theologians who use the teleological process to argue against the existence of God. Fundamentally, these arguments assert that there is no order in the universe, that it is in fact all chaos, and that therefore God probably does not exist. The answer to this argument is that if we consider, in the light of reason, the natural things of this world, that is to say, things that we know something about, then clearly there is order, and whilst there is variety, each variant exhibits design and function. We know less about those parts of the universe that are distant from our planet, but we can observe order and uniformity in how suns work, how galaxies work, the consistency of how light works through the galaxy, how gravity works throughout the galaxy, and the consistency of the elemental particles of the universe. And even though there is a huge variety in the different types of suns and other cosmic matter, what our scientists don't yet know is the purpose that these distant suns serve in relation to their own solar systems, if they have one. Furthermore, scientists have told us that if the laws and parameters of the universe were not exactly as they are, then human life could not exist. Nor do they know what purpose black holes serve to regulate the movement of surrounding suns. To argue that the universe is chaos, simply because we do not know what its purpose and functions are, is not a valid objection to the teleological argument. Having considered the teleological argument and the main argument against it, there may still be persons who are not persuaded either way to the degree sufficient to live their lives in accordance with a choice either way. So they cannot make that choice. Such persons may wish to consider what is known as Pascal's rationale or Pascal's wager. I dealt with this topic in section 2.2.5 of my book. Blaise Pascal, 1623 to 1662, formulated this argument, which was first published in 1660 after his death. The essence of his arguments is that it is rational to believe in God because the reward of a life lived in accordance with theistic requirements outweighs the rewards of a life lived with disregard to theistic requirements. The logic of this argument is either that there is a God or there is not, and we must live our lives either as if there is a God or as if there is no God. Living sometimes as if there is a God and sometimes as if there is no God is the same as living full time as if there is no God. So if there is no God and we live our lives as if there were a God, then we have lost little in this life. And if there is no God and we live our lives as if there is no God, then we have obtained the benefit of living a basically selfish, hedonistic life, but have lost any hope that there is something better than this in the afterlife, if there is one. But if there is a God, and we live our lives as if there is a God, then we may spend the rest of eternity in the company of God in paradise. But if there is a God and we live our lives as if there is no God, then we will be separated from God and will not exist in paradise for eternity. The proposition by Pascal is often referred to as a wager because it is essentially a bet on whether God does or does not exist. The payout of this bet is either eternal happiness, the next life, or living a hedonistic life here on earth. In conclusion, I would summarize as follows. The teleological argument is based upon the fifth way of Aquinas and is in accord with the dogma of the Catholic Church. Through the watchmaker analogy, it gives us information as to what to look for when we consider natural things in conjunction with the question as to how these natural things came to be. In such an examination of natural things, we find design, purpose, and order. And such a finding enables the conclusion that these things have a designer and maker. The argument that our universe is chaotic and does not suggest a designer is not a valid counter-argument because from what we do know of the universe, it is clearly consistent and functions in accordance with the laws of physics that scientists have discovered. It is not logically valid to assert that it is chaotic simply because we have not yet discovered why the universe has been arranged as it is. As I've previously said, there is no compelling argument as to the existence of God either way, so we must make a choice as to what to believe based upon the extent to which the evidence and arguments have persuaded us. For those who are unpersuaded by the evidence and arguments either way, we have Pascal's wager, which specifies what it will cost you to choose either way and what you can win depending on which side you bet on. That's all I have to say about this topic in this review. In the next podcast, I'll deal with what theologians and philosophers have called the problem of evil. Thank you for your attention.